We are continuing with our meditation and investigation into a very, very powerful Mishnah. And this Mishnah provides us with a 10 steps to attaining a tranquility of thought and a serenity within the mind. And you wouldn't really see this when you just engage with the Mishnah initially, but we understand that every Mishnah has within it a deeper teaching to which the Kozhnitzer Rebbe, the Avodas Yisrael, shares with us this insight. I'm just going to pause here and get my dog back into the house so it stops making noise. So yesterday we discovered 5 initial elements of these 10 steps. I'll just go through them briefly. We said yesterday the concept of a woman not miscarrying, the Avodas Yisrael revealed to us, was a reference to being cautious about what environments we place ourselves into and what we subject ourselves to in terms of what we see. We have to understand that what we see and what we engage with affects our thoughts. The second level we saw was that the meat didn't decompose, and Avodas Yisrael taught us how this represents our own flesh, our own meat, our physicality not decomposing, keeping it fresh. And the way to allow it to stay fresh is when an individual is subject to desire and negative thinking, that we said this concept of fighting fire with fire, which means when a person is consumed by the fire of desire, then what they need to do is fight it with the fire of nullification to Hashem, through realizing that we aren't our physicality, we aren't our desires, that we are a deeper state of consciousness and nullification to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Then we saw that what it meant to have no fly being seen by the slaughterhouse. We understood that flies represent, again, thoughts of impurity, and the slaughterhouse represents consumption of food. That we often think that when we engage with davening or learning or meditation, that's when we have to keep our thoughts clean and clear. And we learned here from the Avodas Yisrael that even when we're eating, and even, he says, when a person engages with intimacy or any form of physicality, not to lose oneself in those moments. Understand that those moments still need to be infused with a deep sensitivity for the spirituality behind the connection, behind that experience. So when a person's eating, to understand your table is an altar, and there needs to be a purity of thought, just like a korban, a sacrifice, was invalidated if a person had problematic thinking or distracted thinking. Same too with one's consumption of food, intimacy, all of these physical experiences. Stay present. Don't stay in your mind. It's not an opportunity for you to just lose yourself. Then the fourth one we saw, no seminal emission or nocturnal emission was seen for the Kohen Gadol and Yom Kippur. We understood the fourth element here is that a person may be confronted with desire and thinking that's very distracting, very problematic, very confused states of being. And what a person generally does in those states is they're like, whoa, something's really wrong with me. What's going on? But what the Mishnah has taught us here is the following, that the Kohen Gadol never saw a nocturnal emission Yom Kippur, which means Yom Kippur is the time of holiness. And a person needs to realize when there's some great opportunity, where there's something really deep within, something really powerfully spiritual, it will also come with a big smoke screen, a big state of distraction, a big state of confusion around it to protect it. Okay? The positive and the negative. With all positive needs to come a state of I don't know if you'd call it a yin and yang, but we understand that there always needs to be a balance in the world. So when there's something so powerful, there's also something quite negative around and confusing around it. So when we get into states in our lives and we feel confused or confounded or somewhat despondent, understand that it's a smokescreen, that generally blessing comes after those moments of real confusion. Don't fall into the state of panic and despondency. Oh, my life, it's over, God forbid, and I'm just going to give up. No, realize you're feeling confused now, but next day, maybe soon, you're going to have a deep inspiration or deep insight that's going to come from it. And then the fifth one we saw yesterday is that the rains didn't extinguish the sacrificial fire, and we understood the rains represent the Gashmius. Geshem is Gashmius, our physical engagements with the world. And we have to understand that when we are in the world, we have to be focused, that the world doesn't come to extinguish our the fire on top of the trees. And the Avodas Yisrael explained the trees comes from the word eitz. Eitzah is also the word of advice, which means we all have direction. We know what needs to be done, okay? He recommended writing a list and having a certain guide to keep yourself focused and not be sidetracked in terms of the physical engagements with this world. But nevertheless, that's what we spoke about yesterday, about keeping focused, staying focused, and staying balanced by looking at one spot. And the focal point of life is how do we bring in the honor of Hashem? Everything is for the honor of Hashem. And that way, we keep ourselves focused, even in our engagement with work, even in our engagement with mundane activities, what we deem as being mundane. We stay focused and don't allow the rains to extinguish our sacrificial fire. Okay, now we've come up to the final five. Okay, we're going to go through them again in the Mishnah, just very peripherally, and then we'll go into each one on its own. So it says here, the winds never were able to prevail over the column of smoke that existed in the temple. And they never found imperfection in the Omer offering and in the bread offering and the other permutations of those bread offerings that existed in the temple. Another miracle that happened in the temple was that would stand erect, almost unable to move. There was just so many people around them, they couldn't even move. But when they bowed, and their bowing was a prostration on the ground, when they bowed, they were mishtachave revochim. They had great space around them. It was all as if there were 2 meter, space around them. They felt no state of constriction. And there was never a snake or a scorpion that caused damage in Jerusalem. The final one, the 10th one, was that a friend never said, it is too constricted, too cramped for me to stay in Jerusalem. I'll maybe stay outside of Jerusalem and I'll travel in for the offerings there. No, there was always space in Jerusalem. It was never too cramped for a person to lodge there overnight. Great, beautiful miracles, but what do they teach us about ourselves? So what we have to understand is the following. These miracles of the temple, as we spoke about yesterday, is a reference to our temple. We are a temple. Our bodies are temples, but essentially as an entity, we are temples. We are walking states of connection and holiness. And our greatest impediment in our temple is our minds. When our minds aren't clear, when our minds aren't pure, when our minds aren't tranquil and focused, then our temples lose signal. So these are 10 secret gates, secret keys to keeping our minds pure, keeping our minds serene. And we've already gone through the first 5. We're going to now go through the second 5. What does it mean? What does it mean that the smoke never prevailed over the column. Sorry, the wind never prevailed over the column of smoke. Okay, what it means is the following: we all have places of sanctity. What that means is that we can't keep our minds totally undisturbed during the entire day. Okay, our general engagement with the world is one of being somewhat necessary to engage with the frameworks of what happens. So everyone will be confronted with phone calls, with messages, with emails, with kids screaming around, with whatever it may be. You know, the dog barking at the garbage collectors. There are general disruptions in our day. But what we need to be very careful of is that we do have moments in our days which are undisrupted. And what that means, the example that's given here, is that places of sanctity. One example of that is the shul. Okay, the shul represents the column of smoke. It represents the place of connection. It represents the fire and the smoke that rises up to the heavens. It represents the prayer and the connectivity that a person has, you know, almost burning themselves up through the love of Hashem, creating a smoke to the heavens through that nullification through prayer. Now, the wind never prevailing over that column of smoke means the wind, the Koznitzer Rebbe explains, is speech, is disruption. You know, if you think about what wind is, the wind, the ruach of life, you know, is almost the nothingness, the idle chatter, the SMS, the endless, you know, looking at Facebook or whatever it may be, news feeds. There's a wind there. Okay, I'm not telling you can't look at Facebook or look at the news, but what we're saying here is that we retain a sanctity for places of holiness, which means if you enter into davening, or if you enter into learning, or if you enter into meditation, or if you enter into exercise, or whatever you want to call your holy space, you know, of connectivity, make it that it's 100% sealed, okay? That it is not affected by the smoke, by the wind, that it stays a solid column. That if you are sitting down to learn, your phone is not next to you and you're checking it constantly. That if you're sitting, or if you're going to daven, that you're not being distracted by what's happening around you. That you allow yourself to really 100% unadulterated experience of that present experience. And if a person doesn't have that taste and doesn't create that connection on a repetitive daily level, within the day, a repetitive amount of times, then it's impossible to retain a balanced state of focus during the remainder of the day where you're getting those distractions if you haven't initially tied yourself in or anchored yourself in to the PowerPoint, if you know what I'm saying, okay? So that's what it means the wind never prevailed over the column of smoke. The seventh one is that no defect was found in the Omer or the bread offerings. So we understand that the Omer and the bread offerings is a time period from between, we'll just talk about the time period. Time period is a period of time where we work on our attributes very, very focused. Okay, we understand that the counting of the Omer leading up, culminating in the bringing of the bread, is a time period where we work on ourselves from expunging the animalistic, egoic forces that are in us. What that means is, the Koznitzer Rebbe says, in order to be a master over your thoughts, and not that your thoughts have dominion over you, you have to actively work on perfecting your attributes. What that means, and this is what is represented by the period of time from the Omer to the bread offering, which is the time of working very intricately and detailed on our attributes. Every day is a different attribute. Today is the attribute of Malchus Sheba Malchus. Okay, or these are different energy forces that are in us, different emotional capacities, physical capacities, mental capacities. And these are attributes in which there could be a blockage of our ego within those frameworks. So what he recommends here is the 7th point is to daily, actively identify what is the ego and what is you. Which means, where is my ego fluttering? Where is my ego, blocking me? And that could be through a daily journal that you write for yourself, an evaluation of self, just some form of awareness of the self. Where is the deeper self and where is the external self? If a person can't differentiate between those elements, then they're somewhat subject to being confused by the egoic tendencies, which obviously affect and poison the thinking of a person. The 8th one, okay, and that was the concept of the Omer offering and the bread offering. The 8th one, people stood pressed, yet bowed with enough room. What has that got to do with our thoughts? So he explains the following. Many times in our life, we have moments or thoughts where we feel constricted. Moments or thoughts where we feel we can't. Moments or thoughts where we feel, I'm just so lazy, I'm unable, I don't want to, etc., etc. And we have to understand that those thoughts is the standing of people being constricted, okay? And this is what it's saying in the Mishnah, that we stood very tzafuf, we stood very constricted in the temple, but when we bowed with space. We didn't feel that state of constrictedness. And what it means is the following. Every moment in our life that we feel, I don't want to exercise. I don't want to daven. I don't want to, motivate myself. All right, sometimes you need a bit of a break. You can't be too harsh on yourself. But understand that if there's something that needs to be done, if there's something that can be done, okay, don't fall into the despondency of saying, "Oi, Gewalt, my feelings and my thoughts of constriction, let me stay in them, let me just let them totally overwhelm me and just, lather in a state of laziness, No. What this is an opportunity to humble the self. And what bowing represents is the humbling of self. What bowing represents is that this is an opportunity for us to enter into the deeper self, to enter into what is referred to as the neshama. Essentially, if you realize the neshama never feels constricted, never. It's impossible for the soul to feel constricted. In the world to come, it says we fly around. What does that mean? You think we're going to have wings flying around? No, there's a deeper sense here. You don't feel constricted. That's what it means. So that's the understanding here. The deeper person that you are is someone that's not constricted. So when you are confronted with the feeling of, I don't want to, or I feel constricted, you say to yourself and you understand in yourself, this is not me. This is not who I am. This is just the external self, an opportunity for me to now climb into the deeper self to discover the state of not being constricted. And everyone knows the feeling of, I didn't want to go to the gym, but I went, and how good I felt. I didn't want to help this person, but I did it, and how good I felt. I didn't want to sit down and focus in on my davening properly, and my learning properly, and my meditation properly, but I did it. How good did I feel? And that good feeling is the access point of bowing without any constriction. Okay? So be comfortable with discomfort as an avenue for greater comfort. Okay? You are not your thoughts of constriction, is the 8th point here. The 9th point. Never did a snake or a scorpion harm anyone in Jerusalem. So the Avodas Yisrael explains here that there are 2 different energies that exist inside of a person called the snake and the scorpion. Okay, the snake represents our desires and our lusts. And he says here that a snake didn't harm us. Now, the way to engage with the snake is very similar to how we spoke about fighting fire with fire. Okay, I'm going to explain what that means. There's a Mishnah that says if a snake wraps itself around your leg while you're davening the Shemona Esrei, you carry on davening. But if a scorpion comes next to you, you're allowed to stop davening. Okay? So obviously there's a pragmatic element there. We're talking about a snake that isn't poisonous, and we're talking about a scorpion that could kill you with one bite, etc., etc., or sting, however you get. But here, what we understand on a deeper spiritual level is the following. When the snake overwhelms us, when the snake comes around our leg, so to speak, which means that we are confronted with the desire and lust. Apparently, the bite of a snake is very hot, feels like a very heated, a very, very fiery form of bite through the poison or whatever it is. When a person is being overwhelmed by the fire of desire, okay, what they need to do at that moment is persevere with the fire of dveikus, which is cleaving to Hashem, and the fire of passionate service and nullification before God, which means if the snake is around your leg, carry on davening. The way to deal with the fire is with fire. It is to create fire in yourself for positivity. It's not to sit there and just be burnt by the fire of desire. You combat fire with fire. But when it comes to the bite of the scorpion, it's a bite of coldness. It's a bite of distracted, vacuumed emptiness through our thinking. Okay? And what that fire or what that bite represents, what that sting represents, the Avodas Yisrael interprets here or brings here an explanation, is that a person feels uprooted from a state of presence and Yishuv Hadas, which means when we don't feel present in life, when we don't have a tranquility or a serenity of thinking, where our minds are haphazard and just going meshuggah, with different thoughts, we don't feel present, you feel like, where am I, So what do you need to do? So it says here, you don't carry on davening. You don't. You stop davening. Which means the following. A person needs to actively engage with settling the mind. It's not good enough to just say, all right, I'm going to enter into davening. I'm being bombarded by all of this thought and distraction, and I'm feeling really unsettled, and not actively switch the switch of being present. Which means a person, in order to not have the scorpion attack them, you have to actively calm and settle your mind. Which means before you daven, stand there, sit there, and take a few breaths and calm the mind. You can do it. Don't think that your mind is in control of you. You have the ability to calm yourself. So when you are being confronted with the scorpion, stop. When you're being confronted with a bombardment or a harassment of the mind, stop and allow yourself to settle. Allow yourself to meditate. Allow yourself to breathe. Allow yourself to bring yourself into the deeper awareness of the energy in your body, the sensitivity around you, of the expansivity in everything, the air that you breathe. Just calm yourself. Listen maybe, and use that to find a state of presence. And that's the concept here that he brings, that never did a snake or scorpion harm anyone in Jerusalem. The final one is no person ever said that this place is too congested for me to lodge in Jerusalem. Okay? Now what this means is the following. If you think about it, yeah? If you have a good friend, a good mate, it's never too congested. You feel congested when, you're surrounded by people that you're not really connected to. This morning, I think I had 3 kids in my bed. I don't know why they all come to my bed. They can come, to Sarah's bed, but they came all to my bed there. And, you're all suffer for all sitting, there's my beautiful kids, gewaldig, so nice, so warm, so beautiful. I mean, I don't say this at 2 a.m. in the morning. No, I quickly get them out of my bed. But, in the morning, these are chaverim, these are friends. It's nice to cuddle. It's not too tzafuf, you can fit 10 people, And what we understand here is that when we have a friendship with someone, you're not in each other's space. You feel connected. You feel like you can do this, okay? And what the Avodas Yisrael says is that never did a person say it's too congested or constricted for me to lodge in Jerusalem. What Jerusalem represents is our friendship with Hashem, okay? Hashem is our friend. There's a deep connection. What that means is the following. When you have moments of feeling congested in life, okay, and I'll give you a few examples of this. You have to public speak, okay? So people have a fear of public speaking, and they feel congested. Oh gosh, my gosh, I have to do this. This is horrible. You feel congested. You don't want to be put on the spot. Like, leave me alone, man. Or you have to go out of your way to do something. You have to prepare something, or you feel congested. I don't want to go there. I'd rather sleep by myself here. Why do I have to go to Jerusalem? You have to be in some social environment which you don't feel like being in because it's congested. What we understand here is in order to get rid of that congested feeling, you need to become friends with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which means the following. Nothing is too difficult when you're out of the picture. Which means when it's not about you, but it's about Hashem, when your focal point is about Hashem, why am I giving this talk? Why am I giving this public speech? Well, it's not for my honor, it's for Hashem's honor. Why do I have to fill this out? Or why do I have to go to this social engagement? Not for me. It's for my friendship with Hashem. It's for my oneness for my friend, for Hashem, Kadosh Baruch. And I can tell you many times, I have to often public speak, It's been a little bit more, I don't know if you call this public speaking here, but on Zoom. But, every week, every day, I'm talking in public, 3 times, 4 times a day. And on Shabbos, it's endless. And the person can say, oh, it's too congested, it's too constricted. Like, it just, you have to, have the things to say, this and that, etc., etc. But when you realize it's not for your honor, it's for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's honor. You're not doing it for you. You absolve yourself from the feelings of congestion. What will people say about me? What will people think? What will my honor be like? No, it's not about you. It's about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when you don't have that feeling looming over your head constantly of, oi, what will people say? What will people do? Oh, it's just so much nicer to be alone, etc., and not put myself in a vulnerable situation. No, it's for Hashem. And when you feel it's for Hashem and you're not in the picture, then you don't feel the state of being congested. Okay? So I'm going to quickly go over the 10 things. I'm not even going to show it to you in the Mishnah. I'm just going to say the points here, and then we'll conclude with any final questions, okay? 10 steps to purifying thoughts and entering into a state of serenity. First point, be careful what environment you place yourself into. Don't subject yourself to distraction or a state of being pulled into improper poison, lewd thinking. Be careful. Keep your surroundings clean, clear. Don't watch things or be in environments which aren't conducive to proper thought. 2, when you feel consumed by the fire of desire, you need to light another fire, and that's the fire of being totally nullified to the deeper self, to Hashem. Don't identify yourself with the fire of your desires. Realize it's an opportunity to enter into the Yud Hey, the deeper connectivity to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the deeper consciousness that's inside of you through the fire and passionate experience of prayer, of learning, of meditation, of nullifying the self through the fire. Imagine yourself engulfed in flames in a positive way to the oneness and nullification to Hashem. Number 3, everything you do needs to be with a sensitivity to the holiness behind it, to the spirituality behind it. Don't allow your thoughts to just enter into an animalistic, lustful, desireful experience of this world. Even when you're eating, even if a person is engaging with intimacy, don't lose track and don't lose focus of the spirituality behind that experience. Number 4, when you're feeling confused, when you're feeling despondent, when you're feeling like there's just no clarity, don't lose inspiration. Don't think that you have lost yourself. Don't think that life has turned its back on you. Something great is hiding within that smoke screen. Number 5, stay focused, which means when you're engaging with physical things in the world, when you're engaging with work activities, phone calls, emails, understand that again, it's all, you need to stay focused. It's not for me. It's not for my own, states of egoic self, but it's for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Don't allow yourself to enter into the states of, oh, I'm going to engage with this for me. And stay focused within that engagement. See the world as something guiding and teaching you, as opposed to something that you need to fight. So even when you're engaging with physical activities or mundane activities, those activities are there to teach you something deeper. Number 6, preserve places of sanctity 100%. Allow yourself to have full, unadulterated, mindful experiences through those places of sanctity. We spoke about not talking in shul, allowing yourself when you're davening, when you're learning, when you're meditating to fully be there without the buzzing of your phone and the distractions that are around you. Number 7, identify who you are. Identify what is your ego. Work on that. Get clarity as to where the ego is functioning in terms of the disruptions, in terms of the negativity, in terms of the anger or the impatience or the problematic attributes, and discover consciously, constantly, who the self is. Work on that. There needs to be a clear identity of self. Number 8, understand when you're feeling thoughts or thinking thoughts of constriction, that those aren't you, that those are opportunities for ourselves to humble the self, to enter into a deeper state of being, to enter into deeper expansivity that exists inside of us called the neshama. Number 9, when you're feeling troubled, when you're feeling confused, actively engage with calming the mind. Actively engage with meditating and calming and settling the self. Don't take it for granted. Don't just, think through osmosis you're going to experience a deep serenity. No, you have to work on it. Could be a couple of moments before you daven. Take a few breaths. Just calm yourself when you're feeling somewhat troubled. As Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid, says you have to do the breathing exercises. When you're feeling a state of being breathe, whatever you need to do, just calm yourself so the scorpion can't attack you. Then the last one we said is nothing is too difficult. Okay, so it's interesting how the 10th one is not the same as the staying focused one. Yeah, so they're different in the sense as the following. The staying focused is understanding that don't be pulled in to your experience of the world and those phone calls and what you're doing in the world. It's not for you, it's for Hashem. Don't allow those things to pull you in your egoic engagements. The last one is saying, when you feel things are too tough, when you feel things are too difficult, when you feel that you're just really feeling constricted, it's too uncomfortable, it's too congested here, okay? Those thoughts can be alleviated by realizing that you're not in the picture. It's all for Hashem. It's not about you. Okay. So these are the 10 states of, or 10 steps to a more tranquil engagement. These are all very deep things. I mean, we could spend weeks on just, or at least a week on each of them. But we've gone through them, and the rest is your own work to discover what they're teaching. So I wish everyone a beautiful day. I see we have less than a minute, so I'm not sure if we will have enough time for questions. But Shavuot, not Shavuot Tov, Chag Shavuot Sameach. It should be a beautiful time of great exuberance and inspiration and a connection with the deeper self and with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All the best and lots of love, everyone.